Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. If you haven't been here before, my name is Shey Stitt, and today I want to talk about near-death experiences and the one I experienced. So, when I was about, let's just say, I guess I was about 19 years old, I was with some friends floating down the Guadalupe River in Texas. And at the time, there was, let's just say, a rafts only and a tubes only section. And they pulled me down the rafts only, and my tube flipped over and I went underneath the waterfall. And as I was under there, I knew from, let's just say, the water was coming down. It was really, really rough. I couldn't fight my way out of it. And I just knew I was going to die. And so at that moment, I actually saw a hand come through the water and pull me out. So when the hand came down, I grabbed hold of it and it pulled me out and I floated away down the river, right? But once I was down the river, I looked back and saw that there was a person standing on the rock. There was like, the rafts only section and then the tubing, and with a big rock right there. And when I looked back and I saw the person standing on the rock, it was a man that I had actually never seen before, and he had a wetsuit on. So I didn't know exactly what was going on at the time. However, later in life, I realized that this actually wasn't just a man. This was actually my husband's that I met later, his dad. So at the time, I thought though it was my brother, but it wasn't. It was actually my husband's dad who had already crossed over. So, but my brother had crossed over too. My stepbrother had already crossed over too. So, anyway, so the point I'm trying to make here is, so a man pulled me out. I flowed down the river, and then I look back and I see this man in the wetsuit, and I'm thinking, wow, well, he has a wetsuit on. It's the heat of summer in Texas. Nobody wears a wetsuit in the heat of summer of Texas. So, but later I learned out, after I met my husband years later and we got married and stuff, that his dad was actually a Navy diver. So, and he wore a wetsuit that looked just like that. So anyway, very interesting about my near death, right? So anyway, but to explain a little more about my near death, my guides eventually explained to me later that that was actually one of my exit points. So a lot of us have exit points within our path, and so we could either die or we can live. So with that one, I actually died, but I actually lived too, meaning I died, and my whole family, everybody had to experience my death and things of that nature in one timeline. And then another timeline, I actually lived, and then, kept going in that timeline. So then that one kept splitting, throughout my life. But a lot of people have exit points and they don't realize it. Your soul has many, many exit points throughout your life. So I would say maybe about 21 exit points that you can have in a life is what they're telling me. So 21 exit points is a lot, but your soul at the time, it's like a determination point. Do you want to leave or do you want to stay? However, it doesn't mean that you can't leave and stay, like what happened to me. But a lot of people have near death experiences and they're just transformative, and they see lights and they see, other, let's just say, relatives and things of that nature when they go to the other side. That didn't happen with me. It was literally like I knew I was going to die. I was under the waterfall and I couldn't get my way out. And I used to be a lifeguard too. So I couldn't fight my way out, but then a hand came down and pulled me out. So there was nothing I saw in between. But later I learned that actually that was a transitional or an exit point for me. But my soul decided to, let's just say, exit and then to stay, in a sense. So a lot of us have exit points. I've actually been shown one day, you can even ask your guides, especially if you're clairvoyant, or, you'll get, or if you even claircognizant, you'll get knowings and ask them, what were my exit points in my life so far? And you can be shown what they all are. But yeah, that's when your soul decides, if it wants to stay or it wants to go. So it's very interesting though, the ones I had. And, when I was with the birth of my son, it was really hard labor. I was in the hospital for like 2 days in labor. They were essentially tormenting me with my older son. Then my second son was really easy, but then I ended up having a C-section both times because the first one was so traumatic. But anyway, point being that, yeah, you have exit points. So, you can just ask, what are my exit points? And you can be shown what your exit points have been in your life. So that is something interesting to do. But, a lot of people go and they have NDEs and they don't understand exactly why they have their near-death experiences like me. It was just something that just happened. And it wasn't, this big grand, oh, I saw God or I saw the light or I saw my family and things of that nature. And just know those were just exit points. And they weren't necessarily like there for me to, let's just say, had this big transcendence experience. It was there to just start to awaken me. So this was when I was younger. So that was at the point that I just started to awaken. And after that, I started questioning everything. Because I was raised Southern Baptist and things, they have very, let's just say, you know, they have, their beliefs basically. I don't necessarily believe all those anymore, but I still believe in God, and everything else. But the beliefs that they had weren't necessarily bad. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm saying that they are the ones they were raised with. They're the ones that work for them. Everybody can have different religions and they work for them. That one just doesn't work for me anymore. So, nowadays, I would say, I have learned since I connect to my soul or my higher self, what your higher self is part of your oversoul. You have all these different aspects within your oversoul. And this is your oversoul, lots of aspects that go down to you, one little you. But anyway, so yeah, you eventually start connecting to all these different aspects within the oversoul, and you can communicate with them. So I don't necessarily believe everything that every religion believes, but I don't think they're necessarily bad. I think everybody's on their own journey and their path. I think, what you want to believe, believe. Your beliefs create a reality. And that's the reason why we're all here, is to have experiences. And our beliefs help create our experiences. So everybody's entitled to whatever beliefs they want to have. I don't ever negate anybody's beliefs. So anyway, so near death experiences, exit points, that's my experience with my near death experience. It wasn't grand or anything, but it was the start to my awakening. And yeah, it was at a pivotal, let's just say, point in my life when I was, out of, let's just say, high school and then transitioning to go to college and things of that nature. So, there's also like certain times, sometimes they happen too. So, anyway, that is the message about NDEs. So if you've had an NDE, I would love to hear about it if you want to put it in the comments, or, or if you feel like you died before, but you still lived like I did. I would love to hear about that too, because I think a lot of people have these experiences, but they just don't talk about them, and, even after I was floating down the river looking back, seeing some man in a wetsuit standing there, I kept asking all my friends, did you see the guy in the wetsuit who pulled me out? And they were like, no, there's nobody there. So they didn't even see him. So it was meant for me. It wasn't meant for them, and at the time, one of my friends that was with me, she was like, when I was sick, when I was a little kid, I was really, really sick. And I used to have dreams that I was sitting on Jesus's lap and he was telling me I was going to be okay. So there are different ways to have, let's just say, spiritual experiences or things happen, the way they're supposed to happen. A lot of us have soul paths and plans that we came here to live, and so that was planned for one of mine. It was something that was going to happen. It wasn't something that I could have avoided. It was there to trigger me to awaken. And that was when I was, you know, 18, 19 years old, and now I'm almost 52. So, and I had a Kundalini awaken about 7 years ago to where I officially completely awakened. It wasn't that I look back now that I wasn't awakening the whole time. It was like little incremental. I just didn't have the full awareness. So, because I did have a disabled son and I was working on helping him, I was awakening in so many aspects because he's the one that helped awaken me, by having, let's just say, all the challenges and the experiences with him. But it wasn't until I had the Kundalini awakening in 2019 that it just blew me completely open. And at that point, I knew my life was never going to be the same, and it wasn't meant to. It was there to awaken me so that way I could evolve very rapidly, which is what I did. And a lot of people think a Kundalini awakening is easy. It is, it was initially, yes. And I had a lot of energy and I just had all these knowings. And, when I first had the Kundalini awakening and I was laying in bed, I just had like visions just flying at me. Like just, I was seeing like a hologram pop up like a turban, and it was just completely, it was really cool actually. But at the time I didn't even know what it was. My husband had to tell me what it was. But we all, let's just say, have these points to awaken us, and that was another one for me, so I could quickly evolve, at that point. And that one was essentially plan too, because I had planned my life to where I'd have all these little things that would wake me through my life, and then one big one that would push me to where I am now, so I could teach and so I could channel, and I could channel information from higher realms to help people evolve and heal themselves so they could do it too. So anyway, that is actually what I'm here to do. I'm here to help people who have had, let's just say, not easy awakenings. Mine was not easy either. I had a lot of stuff going on with mine. A lot of, let's just say, spiritual things that weren't necessarily positive. in a sense, but they were there to, let's just say, as initiations to help me awaken. So none of that was easy, but I got through it, and now I am where I am now, so I can help other people that maybe agreed to have all these things happen to them, and to get through them too. So if you are having a treacherous awakening, or you have things you don't know what's going on, I can support you. Make a session, schedule a session with me, and I can help and see what's going on with you, and connect to your higher self as well. If I can't help you, and see what's going on as well. So anyway, I'd love to hear if you've had a near-death experience. That's mine. I know I told people after it happened, oh my gosh, this happened to me, because it was just so profound for me. And some people just looked at me like I was crazy, honestly. Some family members were hush hush about it, like, oh, grandma saw grandpa at the foot of the bed before she died, and things like that. But it is really interesting, because now that I'm more open about it and out there, I have heard more family members tell me, oh, we had a family member who could levitate, tables. We had a family member who could see things too, and things of that nature, or know things, and it was my grandma, and I lived with her for a while, when I was in high school and college. But anyway, so yeah, it's just interesting. So I'm not saying it's genetic or anything, but we all come here as like a soul family to evolve. And I know she is part of my soul family, as well as my aunt and some of my cousins, which is interesting. And my dad, who was not necessarily, as my spirit team likes to say, part of my blueprint, wasn't heavily in my blueprint, but he is part of my soul family, which he was an absent dad, basically, went my whole childhood. So he wasn't there. So, which makes sense about him not being my blueprint. But even my mother is not part of my part of my soul family, or my stepdad. Neither's my sisters. It's interesting how I chose my path, is all I'm saying. So anyway, if you have any questions or comments, drop them below. If you've had a near-death experience, I'd love to hear about it. Please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps other people, get this information too. And if they want to discuss their NDEs as well, I would love to hear them. I hope everybody has a wonderful and blessed day. Talk to you later. Bye.